Hello and welcome back to Fantasy Premier League, the D Unit's journey. I'm FPL Unit, and today I'm here with my Game Week 17 transfer tips for what is going to be a very interesting weekend as we go towards the Christmas festive fixtures. And there are plenty of things to talk about. First off, 8 Nouri is obviously a problem that needs to go from everyone's teams. He has already gone from mine, so I'm hopefully here to provide you with the best advice in terms of which defender to get in for him to make the most of this, well, let's be honest, disappointing situation. And then obviously Mateus Cunha has now been charged by the FA. I think he's got until today to respond, so it's likely that he might also need to be moved out of people's teams. In fact, if anything, all Wolves assets just need to be aborted, probably moving forward. So we're going to be covering all those kind of things and obviously covering the best buys and the best sells of the week. So without further ado, let's get into the transfer tips for game week 17 and let's go through what I'm going to be covering today. All right, so the best replacements for 8 Nouri and Cunha, who has now been charged by the FA. Man City players, could they now be good differentials? I don't think they are yet, because we need to see some form from City. I mean, the Pep Guardiola train wagon seems to have completely fallen off the rails. So until we get any sort of confirmation about what is likely to be happening moving forward, I think that we just have to sort of sit there and go, all right, well, I don't think we can get them. That's the honest answer at the moment. Now, is it time for you to spend up forward if you haven't already spent up? If you're rocking 2 cheap forward options, is it now time you bite the bullet and go, all right, we've stuffed up here. I need Isak and Jackson in my team. I think the answer is yes. I've had them since my game week 12 wildcard squad, and it's safe to say that I've been riding pretty high most weeks on the back of both of them returning. And I think almost since game week 12, almost one of the two have returned every single week for me. So I think that's a sign that you probably do need to spend up there. And if you are one of those people that made the decision last week to get Trent in instead of an Isak, then I don't know what you're thinking, because defenders this year aren't keeping clean sheets, and Trent Alexander-Arnold is not a midfielder. Unlike some people that will preach that he is, he actually isn't. 3 assists for the season is not midfielder numbers. So moving on from there, as I said, expensive defenders, are they actually worth it? I don't think they are. In a season that is being dominated by the forwards in terms of bonus points, in terms of goals, the lack of clean sheets, I think that in reality you can actually get away quite easily, as I have been doing all season, pretty much since I got rid of Trent and Pedro Porro in the first half of the season. You can rock with a budget defense quite easily and be inside the top 20-odd thousand teams like I am. So you don't have to have the expensive defenders. I would argue that it's better to go without them. And look, I have looked at Gabriel this week for my own team, and I've come to the conclusion that he's just risen in price to 6.2, and I just can't justify spending that much money on a defender, is the honest answer. And I don't think Arsenal's clean sheets are going to be there as much as we think that they were going to be there last season. So that's my whole reason. And he's not going to be returning and scoring goals every other week. That's just ridiculous. So Tottenham assets change on depending on the week. So they're just in a void. You just can't go there. I mean, like, they won 5-0 last week and Son Heung-min looked amazing, but in reality, they have just been poor all season long, and you just can't go there. As far as I'm concerned, you can't go there at all. Which players need moving? Wolves and Brighton assets. I'm looking to move out my Brighton assets. I'm sick of them. They've had the 4 of the easiest fixtures that I thought that they were going to dominate in, and none of them have returned for me pretty much across the last 4 weeks. It's been a very disappointing show. Keeping an eye on them. And look, I'm off to watch West Ham versus Brighton on Saturday, and I actually don't know if I want to go and watch with all those Brighton players in my team. So that is something that I potentially may move before the deadline. It purely depends on the man that I am thinking of bringing in. Now, I'm going to talk through the 2 different scenarios in my own team in terms of the transfer tips of what I'm going to be handing out. And I am stuck between going back to a Brian and Burmo from a Mitoma or going down to an Ahmad. It's just a matter of what I do with the money. And I'm going to try and talk through some of these decisions in my own head in regards to what I'm going to do. And hopefully these decisions are going to get me into the top 10,000. Who are the best options to replace these issues? I'm going to cover all of that. And we are going to jump in first and foremost into what my current team happens to look like. So let's have a look. So this is my current team as it stands. I have made the 1 transfer, and I have bought in Anthony Robinson from Fulham, who looks absolutely amazing, especially with his 2 assists against Liverpool, which was a definite nice little bonus there. But essentially, I have bought him in instead of Nouri. Now, Nouri has been hugely disappointing, and I think if you're an owner, you have to sell. 500,000 people have already sold Nouri this week. He's going to continue dropping in price. If you bought him at 4.4 like I did, if he drops to 4.7, which he hasn't done yet, but that will affect your selling price. So I'm expecting him to drop before the end of the week. In fact, we'll actually look, this is not very accurate, so just bear with us because I do use this a little bit for my price changes, but these are the price changes as they stand. At the moment, we're looking at Isak and Jackson rising potentially tomorrow or tonight. Wissa also potentially rising. Romero, Faze, Semenyo looking like they're going to drop. So a lot of people are jumping off the Semenyo bandwagon. He has been a little bit interesting, and I'll give an update on my thoughts about him in a little bit. Collins of Wood also continuing to rise there. But the one that I was surprised is Nouri. I don't know if it's because he's red flagged now and he can't actually drop, but you can see there, 4.8, he's likely to drop again fairly soonishly. So I would expect that to accelerate before the deadline when more people realize that, he's not going to be any good moving forward. But look, he's definitely in the flag. And if you haven't got rid of him yet, he's obviously suspended because of that red card. But then Wolves' fixture run, as we'll delve into very shortly, is also shocking from here on in. So look, I am keeping my eye on Ahmad, who is potentially rising. It's just a matter of how quickly he rises. At the moment, he's slowed down since he rose earlier in the game week. But yeah, this is something you need to keep in mind of in terms of when you're moving for players or when you're moving them out, because this is how you build the team value in your team. And for me, my team value is really good. I'm on 105.7 mil as we stand. I bought in Anthony Robinson before he rose to 4.8, which was really good for Nouri. So I've already made up the 0.1 of the team value I lost by selling Nouri. So, and I think a few other of my players are probably going to rise this week as well. Now, in my own team, the big flags, the big people I'm not happy with at all are for Bruggen and goal. And I hate wasting goalkeeper transfers, but I think I actually might use one over the next 2 weeks. Mitoma in midfield, who's been exceptionally poor the last few weeks. So if we have a look at Mitoma, since I bought him in, he has only got me 2s. I obviously bought him in after the Southampton game in game week 14. And 2-2-2 is not what I wanted. Now, look at the fixtures they've had. They've had Crystal Palace at home, Leicester away, Fulham away, Southampton at home. The last 4 weeks, Brighton have not won a game of football against those 4 teams. So I'm very concerned about the form that they're in. And if you want my honest opinion, I think all their assets, probably bar João Pedro, who I think is still a very good budget enabler in the forward line if you're not going to be playing him every week. If he's your 8th attacker and he's sitting on your bench every week like he has been for me, I don't think he's a concern. But the rest are definitely a concern. If you've got a Brighton defender, I think I'll be looking to ship them out for any one of the defenders I've currently got in my team. So when we're talking about Nouri, I actually think that the pick for what he costs was Anthony Robinson at 4.7 earlier in the week. He was definitely the pick. It was a direct fight between him and Munoz from Crystal Palace. Now, I still want Munoz from Crystal Palace, but the fact that he's suspended this week is the reason why I haven't gone for Munoz and I went for Robinson instead. Now, I also don't really like Colwill in my team. And Munoz, I've got him earmarked to come in for Colwill. Now, I'm going to talk through the potential trade scenario in my team because obviously next week I'll have 3 free transfers. But I just want to point out how good Robinson's stats have been this year. So 0.02 expected goals, 0.13 expected assists across 90 minutes. That's super good. He's obviously got a bunch of clean sheets to go in there as well. And Fulham are a pretty decent footballing side. And they've got Southampton straight off the bat. So for me, if you're after the best Nouri replacement, and I don't agree with spending up because people will say, oh, how about Gabriel? Well, I don't like spending money in the defense. So for me, the best option is Anthony Robinson. It costs literally about the same amount. I only had to pay 0.1 mil to bring him in, which I had happen to have in the bank, and he's in the team. So if you want my honest opinion, he is the best player moving forward. Now, over to the status in the most transfers in and most transfers out of the game week. So we can see there that on this one, we'll just pull it up a bit more. So we have a look a bit more at the players. Most transfers in. This is dominated by players that have been in form for a large part of the last few weeks. So Amad Diallo is at the top, 394 transfers in, and he, for me, is a definite buy. I've been, obviously, as a Man United fan, I've been watching the games, and Amad has been one of the shining lights since Erik ten Hag has left. I don't know how that man did not keep playing Amad earlier on in the season, but he is now in the team. He's up to 11% ownership. His expected numbers per 90 is 0.2 expected goals, 0.14 expected assists. He's now been deployed in one of the number 10 attacking inside positions. Marcus Rashford has basically come out and said he wants out through the papers of the journalists, whatever. So Amad Diallo, I think, is going to end up becoming one of those number 10s long term. And if that's the case, at 5.2 million, he's an absolute steal. And you probably should be, like me, I'm actively thinking of bringing him into my team. Now, I'm also going to the Man United Bournemouth game this weekend. So part of me really wants to bring him in for Mitoma because I'd rather go and watch Amad play with him in my team than Mitoma in my team. Ironically, if I make the transfer, Mitoma will probably return and Amad will blank. But if I don't, I can guarantee that Amad's going to deliver and Mitoma's probably going to blank. I'm going to be damned if I do, damned if I don't. Robinson, I've just talked about him. He is 100% a buy. I think he still is the best Nouri replacement. He is better than Lewis Hall. Now, Lewis Hall's stats are pretty good over the 90. So 0.2 expected goals, 0.17 expected assists. So they're very similar in terms of their assist output. Lewis Hall's slightly better. I think he's slightly better on the bonus point system as well. The only problem is that Newcastle's defense, I believe, has not been as good as Fulham's defense. And for that reason, I think that Anthony Robinson is a better defender asset in your teams. So that's just my personal opinion. But look, he was great against Leicester. He could easily back that up against Ipswich. Then the next couple of games, I'd be concerned about Newcastle keeping a clean sheet. The next 3 after that. But then from 21 through to 24, they could easily keep clean sheets. So look, I think he's a great buy. I just think that he's slightly down the pecking order in terms of Robinson. Now, I don't know if Munoz is on this list yet, but now lots of people aren't jumping there this week. But look, he is definitely someone where you could definitely bring in a week early. He's going to be fit and free. He's going to have a rest, obviously, because he's not playing against Arsenal this weekend. So he's definitely another player you could look at. Isak. He's up to 27.5% ownership now. He's up to 8.7 mil. He's likely to rise to 8.8 before the end of this game week prior to the deadline. He's on the back of 30 points in the last 3 weeks. Let that sink in. Against Liverpool, 11, Brentford, 8, Leicester, 11. And it's safe to say over that particular time frame, he's probably underperformed his XG a little bit. So, yeah, he's pretty much on par with what he's been delivering. He's got Ipswich away up next, and you'd expect him to continue his hot form this week in game week 17. Villa at home, I wouldn't be concerned about. They haven't been defending overly well. Man United away and Spurs away. Again, from an attacking perspective, I'm not too concerned about that. And then he's just got that amazing run I just talked about for Lewis Hall. I think he's definitely a buy. Until game week 25, Isak looks like an absolutely amazing asset. And it's the same with Nicholas Jackson. Now, Nicholas Jackson's still walking the yellow card tightrope. So if you were splitting between the two, you'd probably still pick Isak for that particular reason. But if budget was an issue, you'd probably pick Jackson because Jackson is 0.5 million cheaper. The only caveat is that he could miss a game due to a suspension or a rest in between now and probably game week 21. It's quite possible he could sit one of those out. But look, the sea of green there, it's impossible not to recommend him. The man's numbers this season are amazing. Like he had 1.13 expected goal involvement on the weekend against Brentford. Unfortunately, he underperformed that a little bit. Against Tottenham, he obviously underperformed a little bit as well. But generally speaking, he's been amazing. And since game week 12, I've been super happy with both of those players. And I think it's hard not to recommend anyone bringing them into their teams. Now, Enzo Fernandez, a lot of people were choosing between him and Amad Diallo. And I personally believe that there's bugger all that separates them. I've seen a lot of drafts that can't afford the wildcard draft I put together yesterday in my video there. Check it out if you are on wildcard this week. But there's every reason to rock both of them. Like they have both been returning. They're both cheap. They're both budget enablers. It just depends on whether you want to spend money in your defense. And now for me, I don't want to spend money in my defense, which is why I've still got Bruno Fernandes along with Salah, Palmer, and Saka, and I've got a Mitoma in there. So for me, it's one or the other. And for me, I have Ahmad in front of Enzo. And I think that the masses are also thinking the same. I think Ahmad has the higher ceiling. I also think he's more nailed on in terms of attacking potential over the foreseeable future. Chris Wood, I can understand why a lot of people are starting to bring him in. I would also be tempted to bring him in for a João Pedro if I could afford it. That is one of the alternatives I could do. I could drop Mitoma down to Ahmad and I could bring Chris Wood in for João Pedro, which, to be honest with you, doesn't look like the worst move in the world. He has got a relatively nice fixture run from here on in. The only game I'm really concerned about in terms of the way Nottingham Forest are playing is probably the Liverpool game in game week 21. But they have also shown that they can concede goals. And Chris Wood has been looking that good that I might like to get back on the Chris Woody Woodpecker train. Iwobi, again, a lot of people swapping Semenyo for Iwobi. Fulham's run of fixtures, as I've just said previously with Anthony Robinson, does look amazing. He is definitely someone that you should be looking at. I just think that Ahmad being 0.5 million cheaper and Enzo being 0.6 million cheaper make them better assets. And that is the only reason why I've gone off Iwobi. Because last week I was actually thinking of bringing in Iwobi for Mitoma and dropping for Bruggen for Allison. I didn't, but I could easily have done that. And I don't mind Iwobi as an asset moving forward. Cole Palmer, again, if you don't have Palmer, Salah, Saka, I don't know what you're doing. Is the honest answer. Now, lots of people are starting to bring in Brian Mbeumo again. 82,000 transfers in. He does look, the last 2 weeks don't lie. Like, that is what we've been expecting across the season. That's why he rose so much in price in the first place. And he has shown that against 2 fairly decent sides, he actually got a bonus point taken off him. So he went down to 9 points. He was on 10 when I looked earlier in the week. All right, so against Nottingham Forest, Brighton, you can definitely expect some sort of attacking returns, even against Arsenal at home, and then obviously Southampton away. It's not the worst run of fixtures. Game week 21, 22, 24, a little bit harder, but he could be a long-term hold, you know. Or you could definitely look at bringing him in. If you're still holding Brian Mbeumo, I wouldn't be selling him now. I'd be just holding him in your team. There's no reason to get rid of him. Maybe there's no reason really to buy him, but realistically, his numbers have been a lot better than a lot of other players this season. Now, Saliba, I think you'd be better off bringing in Gabriel, who's higher up this list. He is definitely the better defensive asset. He is risen to 0. He's just risen to 6.2. I'm not sure why it's saying 6.1 on my thing. I've just seen the update saying he's gone up to 6.2. He's obviously 0.1 million cheaper than Saliba. And I really like him as an asset. I just don't really like spending up on defense. And I've got Julian Timber instead. I mean, if Julian Timber stopped playing, I'd probably try and find the 0.5 million to upgrade Timber to Gabriel. But because of the fact that he's playing and he's covering the clean sheet, which is the only reason why I've got an Arsenal defender, then I'm quite happy to rock with it. So for me, if you were buying an Arsenal defender brand new, Julian Timber is still significantly cheaper than Gabriel and Saliba. I mean, Timber, I think from memory, if we go down this list, there he is. He's 5.7. So you're saving 0.5 mil by bringing in Timber. His defensive attacking ability has not been that bad either. I mean, like on the weekend, he had 0.31 expected assists. Against Man United when he scored, 0.16 expected goal. West Ham, 0.1 expected goals. Like, he's involved. He obviously got rested midweek as well. So well, no, he didn't get rested midweek, but I'm expecting him to continue playing. I really like him as an asset. I think that if there was, there's a reason why I went for him instead of the others, and that's because he's significantly cheaper. Now, looking at the rest of this list, Raul Jimenez, obviously he's 5.5. He looks like a really good option in the forward line. Milinkovic, yes, Forest are coming into a better run of fixtures. I'm not sure defensively if they're going to keep clean sheets the next 2 weeks, but then they might the following 2. I'm not sure he's going to keep scoring goals, but if you wanted to compare him to a Gabriel, he has about the same threat as a Gabriel off a set piece. So for that reason, he could be worth an option. And I potentially might look there as well instead of a Munoz, depending on which way I go over the next couple of weeks. I'll obviously look at this run at fixtures on the weekend, but Milinkovic, I think, has got more potential for clean sheets than Munoz does at Crystal Palace. So that might come into my line of thinking. All those people bringing in Cunha there, unlucky. That's unfortunate. Saka, Salah, yeah, they're fine. Wissa, again, people covering that Brentford attack, I don't mind it if they're not bringing in Buemo. I mean, Wissa looks like probably a better option than João Pedro, to be honest with you, so I'm not surprised by that in one way or the slightest. Ashley Young, now, I wouldn't be bringing him in for this run of fixtures coming up. The defensive chances of him keeping clean sheets the next 7 weeks are fairly remote. But he has been getting attacking returns, and I quite like that in general. So we'll just have to wait and see how that goes moving forward. And that's about all the players I'm going to cover that, are relevant. So that's the transfers in. If we go to the transfers out for the round, 8 Nouri is obviously leading the way. 509,693 transfers out. He's 100% sell. He's been exceptionally disappointing considering what I bought him for in game week. I think I bought him in for the Brighton game. So game week 9, he's only returned 3 times in that space of time, only 2 attacking returns. And one of them was a straight off the bat. The fact that he got that red card and -2 on the weekend basically means that he's averaged about 2 points for me a game. Just not what I was expecting. He's still owned by 11.1% ownership. So some people not really on the ball. You definitely need to be moving him on. He's obviously got Man United when he's back off suspension on Boxing Day. I don't like that at all. I think he definitely has to go. For me, he's 100% sell from here on in. Erling Haaland, again, 188,000 people have transferred him out again this game week. He's now only selected by 38% of the competition. That is big. I actually can't believe how many people have actually sold him out. It's not ideal at all. If you've still got him, I think you've still got to sell him. Like, I know City's fixtures are becoming half decent. All right. And I can understand why people want to keep him. And I think I would almost be tempted to keep him if I still had him for game week 18 onwards. Like, surely he's going to get goal scoring returns against Everton, Leicester, West Ham, Brentford, and Ipswich. That 5-week spell might be where we see Erling Haaland return. And maybe Man City return then as well and get on a bit of run of form. The fixtures would suggest that they are. And I think he's still a sell. But it's almost, if you've held him this long, it's almost worth just holding him until for the next 5 weeks after this week. Rodgers, a lot of people are selling Rodgers for Ahmad and Enzo. I can understand it. They look like better options. They don't look as tired as Rodgers does as well. Ollie Watkins, obviously, as well. He has been sold quite. In fact, Isak's likely to catch him in price soon. He just looks like a better option. Ollie Watkins obviously started again on the bench. That's the second time in 3 game weeks he started on the bench. And with the fact that Duran's there, if there's any sort of slight niggle or whatever, that's likely where we're going to see Watkins start. Welbeck, yellow flagged. He is being sold by quite a few people. He's down to 5.8 now. He's actually the same price as João Pedro. The yellow flag is definitely a reason to sell. Cunha, again, any Wolves assets, they need to be moved on. The one last good week they've got is this week against Ipswich. And no, it's not Ipswich. What have they got? Leicester. Sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong. So Cunha, I think he's selected by 24% of people. That's likely to drop. The run of fixtures for Wolves coming up, it does not look good moving forward. Johnson, again, he ended up benched, I think, last game week. Lots of people losing patience with, losing patience with the Tottenham assets. You just don't know what you're going to get from Tottenham week to week. And that is the reason why, for me, all of them are sells. I wouldn't be buying any Tottenham assets at all. Pedro Porro, I'm still surprised by how many people own him. 29.5% of the comp. I know he got the clean sheet on the weekend because he came on and played 62 minutes. But he's just lucky they're playing Southampton. He's not going to be keeping clean sheet this week. He'll blank this week, 100%. No chances. Kelleher, if you've still got him, you probably need to move him on. Allison's obviously playing. Luis Diaz, he's just too much of a risk. Pope obviously is going to be out for a while, so Dubravka should be a popular sell in. If you are selling Pope, you could easily go to Dubravka and just roll a bit of money there. And João Pedro, a lot of people are starting to sell him. As I said, he is in my line of thinking to sell. Virgil van Dijk's on this list. That's interesting. And Mitoma. So Mitoma is definitely on my list to look to move on. I'm just not sure what to do. Robinson, by the way, lots of people are selling him. He's actually not suspended for the weekend. So he got the red card, but that counted in the Carabao Cup. So he's actually free to play Liverpool again. He's not a bad option, 5.4% ownership, but realistically, he could be a bit of a risk moving forward, depending on how Slot sees Tsimikas when he comes back in. A few people also selling Saka. Like I said before, I actually can see a world where maybe not having Saka is okay. He hasn't looked the best the last couple of weeks, but it's not something I'm willing to risk or move to just yet. But in theory, if Erling Haaland starts popping off, Saka will be definitely the one that leaves the team in order to make it happen. And then Trent Alexander-Arnold. Lots of people correcting their mistakes that they made last week, bringing in the defensive asset for 7 mil. It's just a waste of money. I can't recommend Trent Alexander-Arnold at 7 mil. I hate to say it. If he was 6 mil, I'd consider it. But at 7 mil, I just don't think he's reliable enough in order to, get the points that you require. So going back to my team, my plan here is next week, I've got 2 different options. I'm going to talk you through both of them, and it's going to involve using all 3 of my transfers. Now, depending on whether Ahmad rises this week or is looking to rise this week, Mitoma will definitely be leaving the team and Ahmad will be definitely coming in. Now, if it looks like that's going to cost, if Ahmad's going to rise to 5.3 before the deadline, this will be made before the deadline this game week, and I'll roll 1 free transfer into next week. Now, in this event, obviously, Liverpool have Tottenham this game week, so I'm not overly thrilled with buying one of their assets, but Alisson Becker would come in for Verbruggen, and I would then be covering the Liverpool defence and the Arsenal defence. And then I'd be quite happy to roll 2 of Kirkes, Colwill, Robinson and Hall moving forward. Now, the other factor I've got to take in here is Munoz. Now, Munoz is obviously red flagged at the moment because he is suspended for this week because of the fact that he actually accumulated 5 yellow cards. He has to serve it in the competition he got those 5 yellow cards in, which is the Premier League, which is why he's not playing this week. Whereas Anthony Robinson is eligible to play because he's already served his red card in the Carabao Cup. So for me, it's then a matter of whether it's Colwill that leaves or Kirkes that leaves. Now, for me, Colwill's run of fixtures runs out pretty soon, like in 4 weeks' time. Obviously, Everton, the last nice fixture there, I'd probably play him the next 3 weeks. Crystal Palace, Fulham, Everton, looking pretty good. Then I probably think the next 4 weeks I don't really want. But maybe I can bench him and not have to worry about him for that particular period of time. And maybe the better option is actually to get rid of Colwill, because Colwill doesn't offer anything in terms of an attacking perspective really across the season. 0.03, 0.06 for the season. He's not an attacking asset. He's literally just going to be keeping the clean sheet points. And Chelsea have a knack, unfortunately, of conceding the odd goal against every team they seem to play against, which is highly frustrating because their defensive numbers suggest that they should be keeping clean sheets, but they haven't. So maybe it's Colwill that then goes for Munoz. So I really like Munoz as an asset. He's obviously got 2 goals, 2 assists for the season, 0.18 expected goals, 0.05 expected assists. And after this week, the run of fixtures for Crystal Palace is rather enticing, as you can see there. Like, it's a good run of fixtures for a long period of time, probably all the way through to game week 31, which is probably close to when I'll be playing my next wild card. I really don't mind that move. Now, realistically, I could probably get away with not bringing him in. However, he's likely to rise to 4.8. And I think that with his attacking numbers in that, he's a better bet than me keeping a Colwill. Like I look at my team value, I'm like, Kirkes is up to 4.7. He goes to 4.8. He's going to rise to 4.6 selling value. But like, that's where I'm thinking of going. So like, realistically, I think it's likely to be Colwill that leaves at this particular point. And then I'm quite happy rolling this team for the foreseeable future. I've got 0.2 million in the bank. I don't know what I'd do with that. And I'm quite happy with the way everything looks. Like, the whole team looks really nice. And I think I just roll with it from there. I mean, like, in reality, the other option is, so that's option 1. I could do that. Option 2 is we'll just restore Colwill, We'll get rid of Becker. Actually, we're not going to put in second option. This is what happens. So Henderson comes into goal because again, I talked about that nice little run of fixtures there. Now Ahmad leaves. I'm pretty sure I've did this right the other day, and I'm pretty sure I can afford this still. So Brian Mbuemo comes back in. I sold him for 7.6, and he comes back in for 7.6. That's the problem. I thought there was a problem. So I can't quite afford Munoz in this scenario, and I'm stuck with 4.6, which is why I don't like this option. And also it rules me out of Liverpool triple up for the game week 24-25. Now, if we have a quick look at, we'll just put it in price here. I could bring in Milinkovic instead. Now, that's not a bad option. And people will say, all right, well, that's pretty good. That would leave me with $0 in the bank. And this then would make it a very easy benching selection for me every week. João Pedro just starts on the bench every single week. Now, I'm not sure which option I like the most. However, that's what's on the offer. I could literally do both of these ones next week, or I could move the Ahmad one this week. If you have watched this video for this long, can you please give me your own advice in the comment section below? Let me know whether you think this is a better draft or if it's better to have Alisson, Timber, and Ahmad. I'm really intrigued to know. Obviously, I am aware that if I do this, it makes it almost impossible for me to get a Liverpool defender into this lineup for that double game week in 24-25, which is why I'm not leaning towards this particular draft at the moment. And I'm probably leaning more towards Timber, Alisson, and Ahmad moving forward next week. Let me know in the comments what you think. I am intrigued to know. That's been fantasy transfer tips. If there's any other questions you want to know prior to the deadline of what you want in your team, please whack them in the comments. Make sure you like the video. Subscribe if you're new and you've made it all the way to the end, because that's obviously meant that you've enjoyed the content. And I'll be back tomorrow with my team selection for game week 17. And then I'll be live with Alan from his house for the deadline stream for game week 17 from 9 a.m. on Saturday morning UK time. That's been the D Unit. Thanks for watching.